All right, guys, welcome to the Digital Barbell Podcast, take 3. Thank you guys for being here. Some technical difficulties today, but we got through it and we are here. This is going to be a great episode to watch on the YouTubes. We're going to be talking all about how to read nutrition labels today. And Blakely's got an interactive multimedia experience set up for you, but we're also going to try to make this super useful if you're just listening to it on the podcast too. But we are putting a ton of emphasis on our video content lately. Every time we say something about on Instagram and I say, hey, help us get to 400 listeners or subscribers, boom, we hit it. We're like 444, I think, right now. We're creeping up on 1,000.
You mean of YouTube? Yeah.
Yeah, on YouTube. So yeah, if you have never checked out our YouTube channel, definitely go check it out. We have a sponsor today.
Yeah.
You got something wrong with your headphone?
Always my big head's always uncomfortable on headphones. But yeah, let's go ahead.
Today's sponsor is Mousetraps. The whole universe of Mousetraps has jumped in and sent us a giant check for a sponsorship.
They sent us a dozen Mousetraps.
I don't even remember what we posted on our Instagram story, but I asked if people wanted to hear the story about what was going on with mice around here. And they said yes, and I forgot to do it on Instagram. So here we go. Let's talk about what we've been dealing with out here in the country.
Yeah. Well, we had something in the wall between like our bedroom and bathroom, and we could hear it scratching around, and then like buttons would actually go up to the wall and like scratch back. I was like, oh gosh, something's in there. And so the guy who like takes care of the properties around here, he came and put a trap. We thought it was like a possum or something, put a trap in the attic, and it had like dog food in it to try to track this guy. Anyway, I think that dog food in our attic was not a good situation because it then was attracting mice into our attic. Ugh.
And therefore into the house.
Only into our bedroom. So we had been sleeping in a different bedroom because of the thing in the wall and all this stuff. Anyway, so we are sleeping in another room of the house. We get up one morning, we go into our room to like brush our teeth. And I always make it a habit to look like where the mousetrap was in their bedroom.
I put a mousetrap on the floor.
Right by my side of the bed, right by the nightstand. Like, yeah, not a good place. Not that's why we weren't sleeping in there. I was like, I can't. And he was like, oh wait, I think, we haven't heard anything. Let's just go back in the room. And I was like, not yet. Let's give it a few more days. That day we go in there, I go, where's the mousetrap? Did you move it? And he goes, no, did you? And I was like, where's the mousetrap? Where's the mousetrap? And
it was gone.
It was gone. And so I'm like freaking out, looking around the room, and I see like this debris kind of over by your dresser. And I'm like, what is this debris? Like it didn't really look, it just looked like flakes of something. Yeah, like flakes of something. I don't know. Anyway, so we get down there and we're looking and we like start to wipe it up, and we hear this like the mousetrap moving. We hear the mousetrap moving and we're like freaking out. And
I'm still in my underwear at this point, like no coffee,
mid toothbrush. Turns out this mouse had like gotten into this underneath the dresser and like gone up trying to like go into this crack, and like, the dumb animal experiment where like you go into a hole and you can't get in because you got a big giant mousetrap hanging off your butt and you don't reverse. So he's like got his head through like this little crack and his butt is with the mousetrap below, and he's just like stuck there.
I think it's important to point out, though, we didn't know any of this at the time.
We just hear it.
So I'm slowly like moving the dresser out, trying to like look underneath. I actually got the dresser out far enough to use a flashlight to look underneath, and I saw the mouse trap.
But you couldn't see the mouse.
Couldn't see the mouse.
Removed all the drawers and still couldn't see him. He was not in a drawer. He was like underneath, like trying to just like basically like the foot of the thing, like kind of like on this little platform, I guess, under. It's a really old, it was like my great grandmother's dresser. So that tells you like how this thing was.
It was a really old mouse.
Yeah, really old. But anyway, I had the great idea to like get the mousetrap outside the house. I mean, get the whole dresser outside the house, because I was like, if we get this guy loose, he's going to run crazy, and I do not want that happening in the house. So we managed to move the dresser outside the house while he's still like struggling to like be under there because he won't go back down through the hole. And now he's outside and like where he's totally exposed. And he's just sitting there, and he was really cute.
He was stuck.
I
mean, he could have. Well, actually, he did. He figured out he could turn around.
He turned around and went out, and then of course there he goes scurrying around with a mouse trap like hanging off his butt. And he tries to go back in the house. But luckily, he showed us where he was getting in. He tries to go right back in, and get stuck by the mousetrap. Anyway, I made the story really long, but that's it. And then he had to not be here anymore.
I had to take
Rest
care of
in
his
peace,
stuck
little
mouse.
mouse.
Yeah.
But yes. Anyway.
But let's point out, like, we're not like gross people who have this like crumb-filled house that mice are. We live in the country, guys. Like, I almost say we live in a zoo. Just this morning, 2 deer, 2 cats. We've had wild turkeys, turtles, roadrunners, possums, raccoons, armadillos that all live here on our property.
We live with them. But yeah, like, and we got the dog food situation taken out of the attic immediately because we're like, that's attracting, that's not good to have up there. I don't care if this possum's living in our attic. We don't need this dog food in the attic to attract him. So anyway, it's all under control.
Speaking of dog food and nutrition labels on dog food, how did you like that transition there? That was pro level. We're going to talk about taking away the mystery of food today by learning how to read nutrition labels.
Is there a nutrition label on dog food?
Yeah, I think there is actually. They just break it down like crude protein and that kind of stuff. Fat.
All right.
But the point is, like, everybody knows that foods have different like nutritional values. Some are, quote, better for you than others. Some are worse for you others. People think cookies are bad. Spinach is good. White rice will make you gain weight, but brown rice is healthy. And you get all these like food rules that kind of can give you a distorted view of food in general and kind of like help foster an unhealthy relationship with food. But one of the ways that we try to help our clients is taking away the mystery of those kinds of labels, like not stigmatizing food and all the emotional effects and psychological effects that can come from that. Learn how to read the label.
So this is a course. This is a course in how to read a food label. So get your pen and pencil out. And
it really
will be a Scantron passed out at the end.
And the point of all this is to create awareness around what is actually in the food that you eat. And then you can make decisions based on that instead of these emotional things and take away the stigma. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay, so the FDA and the USDA, they regulate food labels. They're the ones who say you have to have this certain information on there, including the ingredients and all the breakdown that you see on the little chart on the back. So there's rules around what they can and can't say on the front of the label too, like reduced or light or fewer or lean, those kinds of words. Like, they have to meet certain criteria in order to use those things. But beyond the words that you see on the front, that can sometimes skew what you actually think you're getting. If you just flip over the package and understand how to read the label, that's how we can start to break this down.
I can think of a huge one is like a protein, is like something that says like protein bar, protein, whatever. And
we're going to get into that.
Yeah. How much protein does it actually have to have for it to be considered to have the word protein on the front?
Yeah. Okay. So let's just dig right into food. We're going to flip the camera over and Blakely's going to show this.
What are we starting with?
We're going to start with the Cliff Bar.
Are we going to be able to eat these after we talk about them? Because I'm pretty hungry.
Can
we taste test them?
I was shocked to find out that this Cliff Bar that I bought for this podcast has caffeine in it.
Yeah,
they add caffeine.
That's a small print right there too.
Yeah,
contains caffeine.
You could easily miss that. Okay, so let's get into this
to a child on accident.
Let's get into this Cliff Bar and kind of learn based on this. We'll do other examples too, but okay, let's flip it over and look first at what we're going to call the ingredients. They have to put the ingredients on. That's a loud package right there. Okay, so the ingredients will be broken down, and the way ingredients are broken down is they're listed in order of what they have the most of first. So the first thing you see on the list is what the majority of the thing is made up of. And then as you go further and further down the list, that's what it has less of.
I feel like we all learned this in school. Like I remember when I was in school, you couldn't bring a snack where the first 3 ingredients were sugar or something like that. Yeah, it was a rule like that. So yeah, I knew as a kid. That's the one thing I learned about nutrition labels as a kid is like flip it over and look. The order is the order that they're.
That's a good place to start. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at this Cliff Bar. The first thing in it is oats. That makes sense. It's kind of like a oatmeal looking thing. And then we have organic brown rice syrup, soy rice crisps. And then whenever you see a set of parentheses after an ingredient on the list, that means that they're about to tell you all the ingredients that make up that ingredient. Yeah. And then when they close the parentheses, they're moving on to the next thing. This might be a review for a lot of you guys, but that's what it means. But one thing to watch out for is the repetition of different kinds of sugars in a food that might be hidden in the parentheses. So this particular Cliff Bar, the very second ingredient is brown rice syrup. Syrup is just a code name for another kind of sugar. And then as you move down the list, you'll see that there's other kinds of sugar in this thing, but we don't have to fixate so much on the individual ingredients in this Cliff Bar, since we're not trying to tear this thing apart. We're just trying to make sure you understand how to read this. Okay, so let's skip over to the main event and start looking at the calories in this thing and everything else on the nutrition label. The first thing that you should look at on anything is the serving size. This gives you context for how much of this thing do you need to eat, can you eat, should you eat to get the nutrients that are listed on the nutrition label. And you got to be careful of this thing, because not everything you buy in one package is one serving. I can think of these protein cookies that you can buy. I think they're Larry's and Moe's or something like that. And they're a good sized cookie. And the nutrition facts on the back is for 2 servings.
Yeah.
But nobody is sitting there and eating half one of those things. And when you look at it from the context of the serving size, you're like, whoa, this has a lot more in it than I thought.
But I think you had the situation when I think one time we were in a coffee shop and you bought one and ate it, and you glanced down and you're like, okay, that's 250 calories or whatever it was. That's great. Like I'll eat this. And you ate it, and then you look deeper and you're like, that's 2 servings.
Yes. Okay. So how much and then you're going to see when you look at the serving size, it's broken down into units, like 1 bar, or it also tells you in grams how much a serving is. That is literally like, if you were to put this thing on a scale without the wrapper, it should weigh the serving size. You'd be surprised how many times things don't actually weigh how much they say they weigh. But that's not the point of this podcast. Okay. So we talked about how some things are more than 1 serving, so be careful of that. Let's talk about the total number of calories in that serving. Okay, remember that all energy and food can be broken down into 3 categories. We call them the macronutrient categories. They're protein, they're carbs, and they're fat. There's also alcohol also has calories in it, but you're probably not going to find alcohol in a snack bar, and we're not going to get into that today. But all the calories in something come from those 3 sources. So those are going to be a big focus of how we figure out what's in a food, by focusing on those things. There's going to be a lot of things in the nutrition facts that are listed that don't actually contribute to the calories. So we'll talk about why that is too. Okay, let's flip back over to the food label and start to analyze this Cliff Bar a little bit closer. Okay, so the first thing we want to look at besides the calories is the amount of fat in the serving, because that's usually listed first, I believe. Fat has 9 calories per gram that you see on the food label. So if you take the number of grams of fat that you see and you multiply that times 9, that's how many of those calories come from fat. So in this example, 6 grams of fat times 9, so 54 of these 250 calories in this Cliff Bar come from fat. Okay. Let's move on to carbohydrates. Carbohydrates also have 4 calories, or they have 4 calories per gram. So we're going to multiply that times how many carbs are in this Cliff Bar. How many are in that thing? 43, does it say?
Oh, here it is. Total carb. Yeah, 43.
Okay. So 172 of this 250 calories come from carbs. Okay, let's skim down to protein. It's always the last thing on the list. It's always bolded though. Protein also has 4 calories per gram, just like carbohydrates do. So this Cliff Bar has 10 grams of protein. So 40 of the 250 calories come from protein. So theoretically, if I add all those numbers up, the protein, the carbs, and the fat calories, that should total the 250 calories. But for those of you adding on your calculator at home, those do not add up to 250 in this example. They add up to 266 calories. And that's off by about 5% in this example. There's a few different reasons why this can happen, but the most common is because food companies are allowed to round off up, and they usually will round down for their own benefit on the food label. So there's always a little bit of wiggle room. And honestly, like if you're somebody who is getting super stressed out by that, just relax and know that your body doesn't know the difference if you ate 250, 255, or 260 calories. It's not about that. Don't let those rounding errors throw off your game. Close enough is close enough sometimes. Okay, another thing that can contribute to why these things don't add up, and I'm going to talk about this more in a little bit, is the amount of fiber that is in a food. We don't have to get super detailed on that right now, because there are other examples of foods that are better examples of it. Okay, let's move on to
dietary fiber.
Yes, dietary
All right.
fiber. There it is.
5
It's a
grams.
little bit out of focus on that.
Yeah.
There we go.
Good.
Okay, if you look at the DV column, that's up there at
Yeah.
the top. It's the one
Daily
where all the
value.
percentages are. DV just stands for your daily recommended dosage of whatever that nutrient is.
Mhm.
They give you ones for everything from the vitamins and minerals to the protein, carbs, and fats too. These are based on somebody who eats an average of 2,000 calories per day. And these are minimums set by a conglomeration of governmental bodies. So they come together and they say, okay, a healthy person needs to have a minimum of this amount of this nutrient. So here's a perspective on how much you're getting from this one particular food. The thing about that is I would ignore what those percentages are, and certainly don't try to eat foods throughout the day that add up to 100% to reach your overall goal. Number one, these aren't based on you. They're not based on what's optimal for body composition. They don't have anything to do with how many calories total you should be eating during the day. And they're just not that helpful for the kind of person that's listening to this podcast. As a matter of fact, like if you were to go by their total protein recommendation for the day, a 150-pound person based on their guidelines would be eating 55 grams of protein per day.
Because this is not says it's 19% of your day at 10 grams.
That's sad. Our recommendation for that same 150-pound person would probably be closer to 120 grams of protein per day, a drastic difference. If this if this topic interests you and you're like, well, I want to know kind of how many protein, carbs, and fats I should be eating, we wrote a free tool, our calorie and macronutrient guide, that I'll put a link for you to download in the description and show notes for this episode. Okay, let's break down those 3 macronutrients a little bit further because they do get into a little bit more detail on this nutrition label. Let's switch the camera back over and show what's underneath the fat and what's underneath the carbohydrates. Okay, so if you notice underneath fat, they break it down into saturated fat. The thing with saturated fat is you want to get a maximum of about 10% of your total daily calories from saturated fat. Research has shown that going much over that puts you at increased risk for high blood pressure, heart disease, and we want to avoid that. So that's why the government is requiring them to break down how much saturated fat is in something. So even though the saturated fat is called out separately underneath the total amount of fat, it contributes to the total that you've seen. So in this Cliff Bar, even though it says there's 6 grams of fat in the Cliff Bar and 2 grams of saturated fat, the 2 grams is included in the total fat that you see above. So don't think about adding all those up together. There's always there's always a line for trans fat. You'd be hard pressed. I don't even think you're going to find any food now that has trans fat in it. It's so bad for you that it's the government has like banned it from being in food. So I don't know why it's even required to be listed on there, honestly. Cholesterol will be listed on there. Cholesterol is a form of fat. It's not something that has like specific extra calories in it. A common misconception is that foods that have cholesterol in them are going to automatically make your blood cholesterol higher. That's just not true. If you have a genetic predisposition for cholesterol, for high cholesterol, your doctor might have you on a limited cholesterol diet, in which case you need to be working with them and have the amount that you're supposed to limit yourself to each day. But cholesterol is specifically called out on the food label. Okay, let's move on to sodium. It's always listed out separately. Sodium isn't something that has calories in it, but it's always listed out separately because some people also have elevated blood pressure, and their doctor may have them on a low sodium diet for that reason. But that's something that you can check out. But again, it does not contribute to the overall calories in the food that you're eating. Okay, let's move on to the most controversial of all, the carbohydrates. Carbs are broken out on food labels into fiber. Sometimes they'll even be broken out further into soluble and insoluble fiber. And then underneath fiber, they'll get broken down into sugar, added sugar, and sugar alcohol. Sugar alcohols are artificial sweeteners made from fermented sugars. Okay, but remember, just like the saturated fat was already accounted for in the total fat, everything listed underneath carbs, the fiber, the sugar alcohol, the sugar, the added sugar, those are all included in the total grams of carbohydrates. They contribute to it. Hope that makes sense. Fiber is usually found in foods like grains and vegetables, fruits, and other whole foods like that. So it would make sense that this Cliff Bar that's made from oatmeal does have some fiber in it. Now, if you're eating a food that is not a grain or a vegetable or a fruit, and you see it has a bunch of fiber in it, that's something we need to talk about in a little bit. So be on the lookout for that. How much fiber's in this Cliff
5
Bar?
grams.
5. Okay. Okay, let's move on. I'm getting out of breath on this thing.
Mhm.
I'm not used to talking this much in a row. Okay, let's talk about sugar. Everybody wants to know about sugar. Sugar means the naturally occurring sugar in the ingredients in the food. So that's why it just says sugar. So if something is like, if something, a food has like bananas or dates or juice added, it's going to have a fairly high sugar number because those kinds of foods have naturally occurring sugar in it. So anything that just says sugar is a naturally occurring sugar. The government requires people, food companies, to break out the added sugar separately. This is just sugar added as a sweetening agent, like it's its own ingredient. This doesn't have any nutritional value. Added sugar doesn't add any nutrition to it. Like naturally occurring sugars in food might bring along some vitamins and minerals, like from fruit, might bring along a little bit of fiber, like in avocado, that kind of stuff. So we want to try to limit how much added sugar we're eating because it's a good sign that this is not a very overall nutritious food.
So I would say, this has 17 grams of sugar and 16 are added. So there's not a lot of like dates or bananas or things that have natural sugar in here. It's all added.
Which is, that's a pretty good piece of awareness for a food like this, that people probably think of Cliff Bar as like a health food, but look how much of the sugar is just like straight up
climbers. That's what they always have on their label.
Yeah, I guess it's because it has chocolate in it that it has so much added sugar. A diet that's high in added sugar is really just like an indication that you're probably eating a lot of processed foods that are overall not nutritious. It's like it's a good sign that you're not spending a lot of time putting a thought into your overall nutrition and therefore your overall health.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when things have caffeine, they're not required to tell you how much?
I don't know the specific rule on it, but I have seen that some do and some don't.
Because this one doesn't. I mean, unless I just can't find it. It's like the second or third to last ingredient, green tea extract. It says contains caffeine. So I would assume this has very little caffeine in it. Number one, it's from green tea. Number two, it's at the bottom of the list. But I would, I like to be aware of how much caffeine I'm consuming. And I would think that it should tell you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Look into that and let our listeners know on next week's episode. Speaking of awareness around how much caffeine is in that, well, here's some awareness about added sugar. I did some research. A typical chai tea latte that you get at a fancy coffee shop has about 40 or 50 grams of added sugar. That's as much added sugar as like a 200 calorie large Mountain Dew.
I think that is shocking because chai tea you think of as like, oh, I'm having a tea. I'm having a healthy tea.
I'm having my muffin and my chai tea latte.
Yeah. That's surprising. I don't know I wonder what it is.
It's all the pumps of syrup that they put in it to give it the flavoring. I mean, that's just straight up sugar with added flavor to it. So anyway, added sugar is something you want to be aware of. As a general rule, we try to advise our clients that are doing nutrition coaching with us to try to keep to 30 or less grams of added sugar per day. We did that challenge recently. We were trying to get less than 15? 10.
It was tough. It really made me like really have an awareness of the things I was eating. And I actually changed some of my like, just, you have the like standard go-tos throughout your day. And I like changed a lot of things.
Yeah, made some substitutions.
I think for the better. Yeah. I really substituted like having like a pre-workout snack, like something like a bar, to like making my own snack. I'll do like a rice cake with almond or peanut butter and some banana on top. And that's delicious. It just takes effort to make it, which is fine. It's just, it was like I was, consuming more artificial sugars by just grabbing the bar before I worked out of convenience.
Yep. Speaking
of bars, though, let's try this Cool Mint chocolate Cliff Bar.
You can eat it right now?
I just want to have a taste. Let's do a taste test. Why not?
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying not to be too loud with the wrapper.
Save the wrapper, though, because we still got to talk about the protein.
We're done.
There's more to get to on this whole podcast is about food labels.
This one bar, though?
No, we have more, but that thing has icing on it too.
Yeah, take a look at this puppy.
Looks pretty good. Chewy. First impressions?
Cool.
You do look cool eating that. Okay, let's wrap it back up.
So you're going to take a taste.
No, that's all right. I don't want, we can't both be chewing on the podcast. Okay.
That's good.
Okay, we got to get the camera back on the food label and talk about the protein.
I destroyed it.
We can use a different
Yeah, let's
food.
use a different food.
All right, we'll use this beef jerky as
All
an
right.
example. Okay, the last thing as far as the 3 macronutrients that you're going to find on the food label is protein. Just like carbohydrates, protein has 4 calories per gram. There's no way to break protein down into any other categories underneath the general amount of protein in it. So you'll never see like, the way that carbs are broken down into fiber, sugar, blah, blah, blah. Protein is protein, and that's all you're going to see.
I don't really like the aftertaste of that bar.
Okay, good to note. 7 out of 10.
No, less than that.
Less? Okay. Take a sip. Okay. Okay. Below the macronutrients and all that kind of stuff, you're going to start getting into the vitamins and minerals.
Mm-hmm.
And these are just like what it has in it, if any, and also the percentage of the governmental daily allowance.
Yeah, it says right here, based on a 2,000 calorie diet.
Yep. So here's my advice on this. Don't overly fixate on like one particular food to reach your vitamin and mineral daily recommendations as per a doctor. Eat a diverse diet of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, seafood, poultry, dairy, and you will more than likely meet all these without overly stressing about it.
Not this.
And talk to your doctor about whether you have a deficiency in something next time you're getting your blood work done, and don't rely on like looking for a hack of a food to get more vitamin Q in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, leave that alone. I don't want to get off on a big soapbox here.
Please.
Okay, let's talk about 2 more things that I want you to watch for. This is a really hot topic. Let's say you are interested in supplementing your protein with protein bars. Okay. And so you go off to the grocery store. Let's talk about, before we get too far into that one, let's talk about what is the point of supplementing with a protein bar or a protein snack. The point is to get more protein. So we got to figure out like how much of this food that I'm putting in my body is actually contributing to protein versus other things. So here's our little trick for figuring out if a food is high protein or not. Let's use the jerky as an example first. So flip over your package, look at the nutrition label.
I have a bad taste in my mouth after that one bite, I gotta say.
All right, the first thing you want to look for to figure out if food is high protein or a snack is high protein is the total amount of protein in it. So we got this jerky here. Maybe you can pivot that this way. There we go. So this jerky has 14 grams of protein in a serving. We're going to multiply that number times 10, which brings us up to 140. And now what we want is that number we just came up with to be greater or equal to the total calories in the serving. Okay. Move that a little closer to the camera. So
that's 70 calories.
70 calories.
So we
blew it out of the water. We doubled it.
But let's look at a Cliff Bar.
Yes, let's look at the Cliff Bar, for example. How many grams?
Cliff Bar, we've got 10 grams of protein.
10 times 10 is 100. Womp, we are
way under
250 calories in this Cliff Bar, and only 100 of them come from, or only 40 of the calories come from protein, but we are way under the high protein snack rule. So use that tool to kind of like, if you look at a food, you're like, it says protein on the label. Right. It could be a good source of protein, or it could be good marketing. But it's now that you understand how to read a food label, you're empowered to make these decisions for yourself and not be prey to slick marketers out there. Okay, let's compare. Let's take a look at that no cow bar that I got over there. I think that's the next. Oh, you know what? Before we move on to the no cow bar, flip that camera back over. We don't have a graphic for this one, but let's just talk about it. One food that commonly gets thought of as high protein is peanut butter. So let's talk about, I know you don't have this to read, but a serving of peanut butter has 188 calories in it. That's for a 2 tablespoon serving. Everybody's always generous with how much they take for a serving of peanut butter, but let's just say you took a serving, 188 calories. There are 8 grams of protein in a serving of peanut butter. What's 8 times 10? 80. 80 is way less than 188. But however, if you dig into a peanut butter label, you'll see they have 16 grams of fat in a serving. If you remember back to the first part, 9 calories per gram of fat. That means that 144 or half. Oh no, 144 out of the 188, that's way more than half of the calories in peanut butter come from fat. So Peanut butter ain't a high protein snack. Can you still eat peanut butter? Yes, but please don't eat it as a protein supplement. Okay. It's all about the awareness. Okay. Let's go back to something we touched on a minute ago. We're going to talk about fiber. Remember, fiber is filed under the carbohydrates. So food companies are slick, man. They're not stupid. They're smart. They know that people are trying to cut carbs. They know people are going keto. They know people think carbs make them fat.
Let's just look at the front here and take this in first. The no-cal, dairy-free, 20 grams of plant protein, 1 gram of sugar, 3 grams of net carbs.
Okay, so
they're pumping. Oh, and here, gluten-free, non-GMO, keto-friendly, vegan, soy-free.
I mean, the only thing it's missing is like unicorns and rainbows, that they're world peace, and starvation in third world countries. It does everything. All right. So I talked about people like these food companies know the buzzwords people want. They know they want to eat low carb because they think that's what's going to be the missing piece for them. So the thing about fiber is it's not completely digested. Insoluble and soluble fiber, not all of the calories are absorbed. Some of them ferment in your colon, some just go right through you without being digested. So what the food companies have taken it upon themselves to do is add fiber in to foods in copious amounts sometimes, and then subtract the calories that would have come from them out of the food before they calculate the total calories in the serving.
This one actually gives you the math right here. They're telling you what they're doing. Yeah.
So this no-cal bar has 26 grams of carbs, 16 grams of fiber, 7 grams of sugar alcohol. They subtract all that out of that original 26, and they say it only has 3 net carbs. Sugar alcohols are treated the same way as fiber when it comes to this whole net carb business, because the same thing, not all the calories are absorbed.
I would say a lot of food labels won't do this math for you though. So it's all right here under the carbohydrate.
But if you see something on the label,
26 carbs, dietary fiber, dietary fiber, and then sugar alcohol. So back to the front where they're saying only 3 net carbs, and you're turning it over and you're saying, oh, it has 26 carbs, but they're only totaling it as 3,
right?
Because of that math that they've done.
So if you're to really crunch the numbers on this no-cal bar that says it has only 190 calories, like if you don't subtract out the grams of sugar, alcohol, and fiber, it actually has 230 calories in it. So it's a big difference. And beyond like the calorie perspective, like, what do you think the effect? First of all, most people that are listening to this that aren't working with us are probably not even eating 16 grams of fiber in an entire day. What do you think the digestive effects of eating 16 grams all at once in this thing that's going to take you 4 bites to eat is going to be? Not to mention that sugar alcohol can have a laxative effect on certain people. Anyway, beware of foods that have a lot of added fiber to them. Having one of these things, might not be a big deal as far as like the fact that there's a bunch of hidden calories in it that aren't accounted for. But if you are somebody who's trying to like hack your nutrition with all these net carb, keto type foods, you're probably eating a lot more calories than you realize, because nobody truly knows exactly how many calories of those grams of fiber are actually absorbed.
Yeah. And then the sugar alcohol is something that can affect people's digestion.
And I've seen
this is 7 grams of sugar alcohol.
Yeah.
Like
some bars have like 20 grams of sugar alcohol in one. And it's all for the same reason, like adding things to them that can make them, first of all, sugar alcohol doesn't have the same nutritional value as sugar. But the point is they're just trying to do this to manipulate the nutrition facts. Why would this protein bar need to have 16 grams of corn fiber added to it? It's only for the purpose of
putting that on the label,
of making it look low calorie and making it look lower carb. There's a caveat to this in that net carbs does tie into somebody who's diabetic, because they don't have the same response on fiber, doesn't have the same response on blood sugar as simple and complex carbs, but that's beyond the scope of this episode. Yeah. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. The point of all this learning how to read nutrition label business is to take the control back in your own hands, to break down like the stigmas around healthy and unhealthy, and give you some base education to make educated decisions on your own. You don't have to look at a food and be like, this is a bad food. Right. This is a good food. I can't eat this. I can't eat that. You can look at it and be like, okay, I understand what this is. Now I can make an educated decision based on my
and to
own.
not be fooled by labels, the things that they put on the front.
Yeah,
and letting them control what you're going to put in your mouth.
for sure. So, okay, that's the point of all this. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out, Jonathan at digitalbarbell.com or Blakely, Blakely at digitalbarbell.com. If you're watching this on the YouTube, please hit the subscribe button before you leave and hit the notification bell too, so you get a little email every time we post a new video. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next week with another one. Cut.